Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financials Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant. And today we are handling lesson 31 of accounts payables. And Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to this lesson in our Financials Functional Training series for Oracle. In this session, we're going to talk about Supplier Merge, and we're going to see when Supplier Merge can be used and what the implications are of when you conduct a Supplier Merge. So as the name suggests, a Supplier Merge happens when you basically put together two suppliers, okay, into one. So what are the reasons why supplier merge would be done? For example, if one of your suppliers has been acquired by another one, then you would need to conduct a supplier merge, of course, if you're going to continue doing business with the latter supplier. The other reason why you would do this is to remove duplicates. So maybe when users were entering or were creating suppliers in the system, they entered the suppliers as different names, while all along they were just the same supplier. So you would do a supplier merge and put those duplicates into one. Okay. As we are going to see, what really happens is that you merge supplier sites. All right. So what really happens is that you merge supplier sites because the site is where the transactions are taking place. Okay. Or that is the actual real world entity that you're entering into transactions with. So for example, if we have a supplier, in our case, we created a supplier called Mjengo Construction Materials, then Mjengo will have a site, maybe in a city. We created a site in Jacksonville. So maybe if the users created these two sites, they created the Jacksonville site and had a duplicate, then you can merge those two sites to become one. All right. And that's in the case of removing duplicates. In the other case, maybe Mjengo has been acquired by another a bigger vendor, right? So that other new vendor, you will create a supplier in the system, and that they will it will have a site. So you will move Mjengo supplier sites to the supplier site of the new vendor that you'll have created, and that is the case of a real world merger or an acquisition. So we are going to see how to do this. When you're merging suppliers, some documents are also merged. Okay. Documents that are usually merged are invoices. For invoices, you can choose to merge all of them, or you can just select the unpaid ones. Associated payments are also merged, so they go to the new supplier. You can also choose to merge purchase orders, of course, if you're using purchasing module. All right. The other thing to note about supplier merge is that it is irreversible. So once you complete the merge, you cannot reverse it. So before you do the merge, you need to make sure everything is set and that you're doing the merge in the correct way. So this is just an example of how a supplier merge would look. Like I said, the merge takes place at the site level. So in this example that I have shown here, we have a supplier called Mjengo Construction Materials. This supplier will have two sites. Maybe they have a store in Jacksonville and they have another store in Tampa, Florida. If you do a supplier merge, you can move, you can merge this supplier to, you can merge the Mjengo Jacksonville site to the Tampa site. Maybe this one is being closed down, all right? And so this one is taking over all the businesses of the one in Jacksonville, okay? So you would do a merge, and all the documents belonging to Mjengo, of course, the ones that you pick will be moved for Mjengo Jacksonville will be moved to Tampa. So you can move the invoices, all of them, or the unpaid ones. You can also move, if you do the merge, all the payments associated with your invoices will also be merged. And of course, you said purchase orders if you are using the PO module. In this other example, I am trying to demonstrate in the case of an acquisition. All right, so we had Mjengo Construction, and Mjengo Construction Materials was acquired by this new vendor, which you can call big builders, construction suppliers. So what happens is that if this supplier maybe has one site based in Jacksonville, and Mjengo Construction, they had two sites, then these two sites will be merged and moved to this new site belonging to the big builders construction. When you do a merge, the site or the supplier is deactivated, it becomes inactive. So for instance, in this case whereby you're just moving the site, you're just merging the site, the first supplier site within one supplier. If you merge Mjengo and then merge it to Tampa, Jacksonville to Tampa, then Jacksonville becomes inactive, okay, and that is irreversible. But the supplier remains valid or active because you still have this site under it. In this case, whereby it's an acquisition and you're moving, you're merging all the sites to the new supplier, then the whole supplier becomes inactive, of course, if these are the only sites belonging to this supplier, and that is also irreversible. So those are just some of the things that we need to know about supplier merge. So we can call this the source site, and this is the target supplier site. So what we are going to do is we are going to see how to do a supplier merge, but of course, in order to do this, we have to pick one scenario which we are going to implement. So in our current setup, we have this supplier and we have one site, Mjengo Jacksonville. So we can either decide to create a new site under this same supplier, and then we can merge Jacksonville to the new site, or we can create a completely new supplier. All right, we don't have two sites under Mjengo, so we will just be merging we would just be merging Jacksonville to this new site, okay? So let's go with this scenario. We can enter a new supplier. We are going to define the site, and then we are going to carry out the merge. So let's go to Oracle. I am logged in. Go to my payables responsibility and go to suppliers, then entry. We want to create a new supplier, okay? So let's create supplier here. We can call this Big Builders Construction Suppliers or something of the sort. If you remember this page, that's the only mandatory field, so that should be enough. Okay, so we have this page. What we are going to do is we want to create a site. We said we can create a site from here, or we can create an address, and then we can make that a site. So let's go to address book, and we can create an address here, right? All right, what's the address we want to use? 150 High Street. Let's put this in Tampa instead. Florida. Address name, we can call this Big Builders Tampa. So when we're looking for this address, all we have to do is look for big builders in Tampa. So that looks good, and let's continue. The address is not validated. That's fine, because we're coming up with this, but and when you create an address, Oracle asks you whether you want to make this address a site also. So that's what we want to do. So we can call the site name Big call it Builders Tampa, so that we can have the full name Tampa. So we select that, and that is the OU. So we have our site here. Big Builders Tampa has been added to the address book for Big Builders Construction Suppliers. So cancel. Let's go to manage sites. And what we want to do is enter this purpose right here, so that we will be able to create invoices for this site. So we need to mark this as purchasing and pay. right? And we can apply. Okay, so that's good. So we have a new supplier, and we also have a new supplier site. So what we want to do is to merge. This is what we are doing. We have Mjengo Jacksonville. We have created this new supplier that's going to acquire Mjengo, right? So now we want to do this merge. We're merging Mjengo Jacksonville to the new site that we created for this new supplier. Of course, we use Tampa instead of Jacksonville, just so that they can be different here. Okay, so this looks good. Now, what we want to do is maybe we are going to enter a few invoices, maybe one invoice for our new supplier before we do the merge. Okay. So here we will normally just come and enter Mjengo. Let's see. So now we have two suppliers. Okay, let's select the big builders, construction suppliers. It has only one site. Invoice date we are going to use system date. Invoice numbers BB1000. Need to enter payment terms. Can use Maskani immediate. Pay through check. Let's go to lines 100. Let's enter distribution account. Okay, so that looks good, and let's save our work. Can validate this. So we have our first invoice under our new supplier. All right. So there's one thing I wanted to mention you can run an invoice history report, which is a standard report, and you can run this just to make sure before you do the merge that there are no duplicate invoices. All right. So before you do the merge, you can run this invoice history report. You can run it for a particular supplier just to make sure before the merge that there are no duplicate invoice numbers, because Oracle does not allow you to have duplicate invoice numbers. So before you do the merge, it will be advisable to run that report and to make sure that those duplicates do not exist. And I'll just maybe show you how to do the report. So you can go to other in this menu, request, run, single request. It's a standard report. Invoice wildcard invoiced history report. Let's see the parameters. It gives us the supplier name. Okay. You can also choose the site. So for example, if you want to run one from Django before we merge it to the new big builders suppliers, then we can just enter Django here. Construction materials. We only have one site, so it doesn't really matter what we enter here. Press OK, and you can submit this. We don't want another request, so this should complete soon. So it's been completed. Let's view the output. So you can see these are all the invoices, and we know we have only one site. And here are the invoices and the invoice numbers. So you can look at this report and make sure that you don't have any duplicate invoices before you do the merge. So now we know we don't have any duplicates. We have our two sites, two supplier sites ready, and we can go on and do the merge. So how do we do that? We go to suppliers, then supplier merge. This is the window that you get. Okay, when you open this, when you follow that navigation. So let's start. Under this transfer, you have invoices. You have a list. You can pick to transfer all invoices, or you can pick to transfer just the unpaid ones. Now we know if we go to the invoice workbench and look at some of the invoices that we've entered, we are going to see that they are going to see which supplier and which site they belong to. So when we transfer the invoices from Django to big builders, that ownership should change. So when we go and look at the invoices we'd entered before, and Mjengo, they should all belong to big builders after we do the merge. So we're going to transfer all of them. At the moment, we are not transferring any purchase orders. So what's the source supplier? This should be Mjengo. Has one site, okay? So it's pre-filled there. We have this copy site option that you can use, whereby instead of creating a site beforehand, like we did, we went created big builders, then created a site under it in Tampa. We can just copy site, and this site that we are merging with the new supplier will be created under the target supplier. So you can use that instead of going to create a new site altogether. We are not going to use that because we want to use that new different site that we created on a big builder. So we're going to not check this. Target supplier is big builders, and you can pick the site, which is Builders Tampa, and it's the only one. So remember that this action is irreversible. Before you do it, you should, as a consultant, you should inform the users that you're training how to use the system that this action is irreversible, and they go through with it. We know what we are doing in this session, so let's click on merge. You chose to initiate a supplier merge. This action is irreversible. Continue. Let's go to the SRS screen. Now, before this completes, maybe we can we have all this that we know we entered under. So I think actually it's completed. We know we entered these invoices under Mjengo, but look at this now. The trading pattern and the supplier number and the site have changed. We had paid this invoice. Let's look at the payment. This is still showing that it was paid to Mjengo Construction Materials. That's the name showing there. But if you look at the supplier number, this is 306. I believe Mjengo was 304. You can see that it is owned by big builders instead. All right. Although we know that the check we did do to Mjengo Construction Materials, that was the name that was on the check. But this payment is now owned by the new supplier, whose supplier number is 306 right there. Okay. So this was completed. That is the output supplier merge report. New supplier is the big builders, construction suppliers. Old supplier is Mjengo Construction Materials. And the sites are over there. There are no duplicates. Okay. Perhaps duplicates would be more likely if you are just changing the site within one supplier. All right. Maybe there had been duplicates that had been, you had duplicate sites, so somebody had entered invoices under those sites that were duplicates, so that would be more likely. But you can see the report, you can see the invoice numbers, all the invoices that were merged, right? 19 invoices merged, there are no duplicate invoices. There was one recurring invoice, which we did in our previous session, okay? And you also have the total of the amounts that we have done for the invoices. So that is basically it for merging suppliers. You can maybe choose for your own implementation, instead of creating a new supplier, you can create a new site instead under your existing supplier and do the merge. You should, the process is the same. You can just do that to see the outcome. Anyway, unless Bob, you have something to add, that's a good place to end this session today.
Thank you so much.